The American Society on Aging was founded in 1954. 66 years later, people are living prosperous and longer lives. However, many are living with social and economic inequities and inequalities. And the pandemic, it has reminded us that this country doesn't embrace aging. What will happen in 10 years when 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65? The American Society on Aging is transforming itself to tackle the challenges and invest in the opportunities that this demographic change will bring. The new ASA reflects our year-long programming and meaningful membership experience. The new ASA reflects our commitment to unite, to empower, and to champion all of you. But most importantly, the new ASA reflects our optimism for the future of aging. On behalf of everyone at the American Society on Aging, I am proud to introduce you to the new ASA.
Learn more and join us at www.asaging.org.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Ken Dychtwald. I'm your host and moderator for the Legacy Interviews, and this is our 4th, and we have a very, very special guest today, Jennie Chin Hansen. Jennie Chin Hansen is a nurse, a health educator, gerontologist, and trailblazer regarding a wide range of health, aging, care, and policy issues. She's the immediate past CEO of the American Geriatrics Society, the largest national membership organization of physicians and other health professionals committed to the care of older adults. Previously, and spanning 25 years, she rose from research assistant to become the CEO of On Lok, an extraordinary nonprofit family of organizations providing integrated and comprehensive community-based services for older adults in San Francisco. On Lok's groundbreaking, fully capitated, and coordinated service delivery became the prototype for the 1997 federal law that incorporated the Program of All-Inclusive Care to the Elderly, often referred to as PACE, into the Medicare and Medicaid programs, which now operate in 31 states. She's also served as past president of ASA, and she served as the first Asian American president of AARP. Jennie currently serves as board chair of the SCAN Foundation and is also chair of governance of both the Altarum Institute and the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. Among her many awards, UCSF recently bestowed upon her the Audacious Award. Welcome, Jennie.
Hi, Ken. Thank you very, very much. I'm so delighted and humbled to be here with you.
Oh, we're going to have a good time. But I tell you what, before we get rolling with some serious discussion issues, I've got a few pictures here that I want to throw up on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to tell me what it is we're looking at. So give me a second to get them up. So who is this little girl with, I imagine, her dad? What are we looking at?
It is I. My dad and I are in New York City on the Lower East Side, as you could probably tell from the background.
About how old do you think you might have been there?
I think I might have been around 9 or 10. Around.
I think your dad and mom were immigrants from China.
That's correct. That's correct. My dad actually ended up coming here because my grandfather was here. And my dad came in time actually to serve in World War II, and he served in the army over in for the United States and served in France. And the quick story is because he and many others like him have the same story, served honorably and were discharged in that manner. They were able to bring over their spouse as well as their children. And so that's how we all got to the United States. I was conceived in Hong Kong and born in New York City. And this
got it. All right, so where are we here? Well, let me click it again and see if we can get a circle around your cute little face. Yeah, all right, so what are we looking at here? Who are these little girls?
As you can tell, this is a Girl Scout picture. This is in Boston's Chinatown. It was a community center run by Maryknoll nuns. And the role here was to help all the little girls in this group learn American customs. It's the first time I learned to set an American table. And it was wonderful. We had a troop 551, and I'm sure was one of, if not the only Asian American Girl Scout troop.
All right, now, I don't know, we're going to try to find you in this picture. There you are.
Not hard to find. As it turns out, this is my my capping ceremony at Boston College School of Nursing. And not hard to find because, as it turns out, when I entered college at Boston, at BC, I was the only Asian female on the entire campus. So not hard to find.
Wow. Okay, so there's this little girl born of immigrant parents. And now, is this a fake picture, one of those like Photoshops, or are we looking at the real thing?
Real thing. I spent an hour and a half in that chair with President Obama as we did a teletown hall, having questions from people regarding the potential ACA.
And last, who are these beautiful, beautiful people?
Well, at the very center is my husband, Philip Abrams, and my son and my daughter-in-law are there. That's Eric and Emmy, and our two fun and wonderful grandchildren, Ella and Eslin.
All right, so I'm going to take these pictures down, and I'm going to encourage you to, got a lot of questions, just hit me with your best shot, and we're going to keep rolling through them. I've read that you define yourself as a conservative radical. What is that?
Yeah, well, this is from an article in Boston, from Boston College. And I think the point was, I really do respect structures and institutions, but just because we're in it doesn't mean we just do everything check mark right. There are issues of change that are afforded, and within institutions, I operate more in than without to make that kind of change that's necessary.
So as a young woman, you moved to California to get your graduate degree at UCSF, focused not on aging, but on adolescent well-being. And then you met your college sweetheart and got married, and you moved to Moscow, Idaho, okay? And you became a rural nurse. How did you work it out in a time before the internet and before email? How did you work it out to know which house was ready for you to come visit or not?
Well, because it's quite rural, it's one of those things where as a rural health nurse, you drive 3.2 miles and turn left at the 3 pine trees. I worked out a system with my family members, with older persons. I had people who I worked out a situation where if they wanted me, things were okay, they would have the curtains open. And if I found that the curtain was closed, that meant perhaps I should go in and do a check.
So this wasn't about you got a text, I'll be there in 15 minutes. You had to drive to the house. And because they hadn't, some of these people had no telephones. That's the way you communicated.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive here for a second. Your dear husband grew ill and then passed away from a brain tumor, leaving you a single mom with Eric when you were 28. And then your mom fell ill, and your dad suffered one of what would be a couple of strokes. And you had your parents move in with you while you were raising your little boy. So you were right there smack in the middle of a career and also caring for parents and your child. Where did you draw the strength, or why did you decide you wanted your parents with you?
Well, first and foremost, when your parents are in a situation of that kind of vulnerability, it's either, for many of us, young adults at that time, either you move home and be with them, or I move them out with me. So I chose the latter option because I had started work a few years before at On Lok, which is about caring for older individuals. And since I would be the primary child in the family to take care of this, one by one, I brought them out. And I was blessed to be in the business of caring for frail older adults since both my parents qualified. And I was really lucky. My mother survived a few years. My father survived even longer. My son had a chance to meet his grandparents and know them when they were a little healthier, but certainly see their vulnerability. And he saw my visiting them as a daughter, but he saw me also working as a person in the On Lok program. So he got a very good bird's eye view of just what happens over the life course. So I was blessed to do that.
You felt blessed to do it, even though it was probably exhausting. You were young, you had lost your own husband, you were raising a child, trying to work, and you felt blessed.
Yes, because I mean, I think about many families who live across country or at great distances don't feel that they have the resources in the way of caring for their parents that they might be wanting to. I got that opportunity. So despite the fact that these are challenges, and that's frankly, that's going to be part of the life course of many of us, I had a chance to be the best for my parents, even though we weren't wealthy.
Yeah, and I should say for those folks who are watching this now and in the months and years to come, that beautiful little boy of yours, as we saw in the picture, has become an orthopedic surgeon and a devoted husband and father himself. So you obviously had quite an impression on him, and you did a great job raising him.
But he had good energy on his own, so I just was happy to shepherd it through.
Okay, so there may be some people who don't know how you turned into working with older adults versus adolescents. So tell me about that, and also explain what On Lok offered to the world back then.
Right. Well, it started at the time that President Johnson started the whole Great Society, and the fact that a focus on community was built. And so this preceded my arrival at On Lok, that the community came together to say, this is our assessment. We need, preschool work. We need mental health. We need care for healthier older people. We need care. So the community actually divided itself up to focus on different areas. And so the concept of a happy, peaceful abode is the translation of On Lok Senior Health Services. And it served the northeast part of San Francisco, and it was multi-ethnic. It was Italian elders in the North Beach area, Filipino older men who were living in single room occupant hotels, and a predominance of Chinese elders. So it was very multicultural.
So my recollection, and there'll be people on this call who will be young students or young professionals, but my recollection was that there were a number of pilot social HMO programs where there'd be all-inclusive care, where home care, aging in place, meals, dental, vision, all were coordinated in a capitated fashion. It appeared to me back then that this was next level. This is the way it all should be. How come it's not the way everything is? Why do we have medical here and long-term care there and home-based stuff here and dental's not included for some people and vision is not? Why did that not take hold and become the norm?
Yeah, well, I really trace this from a policy and payment system. Fee for service, you basically you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. You have problems with your feet, you might go see a podiatrist. So it's a transactional approach of paying for things rather than stepping back and thinking what happens to people over the life course, because your health and your function changes, and that you really need to think about it holistically. And I think that's one thing that both On Lok, which focused on the frail nursing home elders, the social health maintenance organizations, the SHMOs, as you allude to, were really for the larger Medicare group and a very small proportion of frail people. As it turns out, Ken, today we have Medicare Advantage, which is now quite popular. Maybe certainly about almost 40% of people are. So they're getting pieces of it, but it's taken about 40 years to really get to that point that people start recognizing helping people stay well rather than only treating their illnesses and traumas is a very different frame of both thinking, of policy, and payment.
If you had a magic wand and you could choose, I'm going to force this, either A, here's the medical, here's the physical therapy, here's the home care, here's the dental, or have it be capitated, integrated. If you pick, if you had to vote for one for now, what would you vote for?
I'd vote the comprehensive, because I think we've always focused on medical clinical issues, and that's what we pay for. And when you pay for that, that's what you get. But sometimes when you get too much of it and it's not well done, it actually has secondary effects, what we call in our clinical term is iatrogenesis. You actually create problems because of the way things are done. There is no question, I've spent my 25 years in a capitated program and seeing how it comes together, and it's not just about medical. I mean, that's not what we're thinking about day in and day out. We're thinking about function, participating, feeling that we're part of, that we have personhood, that we have a sense of being visible and being part of the community. So if we take care of that, sometimes the clinical medical takes a smaller proportion. And in an analysis, there's no question, we don't spend as much medical money dollars when we can redistribute that to thriving. And that's different.
So I'm going to a couple more questions about the evolution of your life into your career, and then we're going to talk about the aging field, and then we're going to talk about your own personal experience of aging. But I do need to ask you this question. You fell in love again and married a wonderful man. Did you go do that on a dating site, or were you meet him at a local bar, or how did as a single widowed mom, how did you meet your new husband?
He was a second grade school teacher. So
of Eric?
Of Eric. Yeah, it was really a surprise because Eric, of course, was really fond of him, but it just turned out that Philip called me at home and I thought, oh no, Eric's in trouble, that he did something. But I found out that he was more socially interested. So it turns out I ended up marrying my son's second grade teacher.
That's a great story. Question for you. When you think of challenges you faced as a Asian American, or as a woman, or as someone who became a widow at a young age, how do you deal with challenges? What inside of you, what do you call upon? Is it faith? Is it a belief? Is it inner strength? Is it anger? I mean, what is it you call upon to deal with the challenges you have faced throughout your life?
I think I've been lucky to have a fair amount of resilience. And with that, I think that things can and would get better. And so I believe that. And I felt that I was lucky enough to have, say, even the knowledge preparation or the clinical preparation. So I felt that along the way, whatever came up, there was a network of resilience that was built around it. And the fact that I felt real grateful that I had the ability to make decisions to do something about it, whether it was feeling the stress of being a long distance caregiver daughter. I was lucky that I was given the choice to bring them out, and I was able to do that. So one by one, things in life happen, as we all know, and part of it is the luckiness of being able to address that. And my father once said to me that, you're a lucky kid, and I've always felt that. And so with that feeling of confidence and opportunity, you move through it.
Have you had mentors? There's a lot of discussion. Our friend Chip Connolly talks about mentoring or mentoring, where you learn as well as teach. Have you had mentors in the field of aging?
Directly speaking, no. Even the concept of mentorship was not that familiar of a word for some time. It is very, used and available now. I think part of it is I've learned from people I've watched who I admire. Jim Beeren was one of those people from USC. There was just a wisdom. And Bob Butler also. He said to me, he called me on the Friday before he died, and he said, Jennie, I'm so glad that you've taken on the role at AGS. He said, I've been working 50 years to try to get geriatrics, moved ahead, and you're here now, and I want to work with you. And so here, he called me on a Friday for this. I had an appointment in his office a week later that was scheduled, and he died that weekend. And I'll never forget that. I got chills, and I still get chills to know that he just wanted me to carry the torch. So it was maybe indirect mentorship. He was passing the baton to me. And I felt that sense of obligation and opportunity and responsibility. So it's different. And then I've learned from people I don't want to be like. And, really.
What do you mean by that?
Some people who are in leadership positions who acted in certain ways, and the way.
What's the way that somebody can act that is most offensive to you?
When they insult people publicly. I can't believe people do that. Part of it is my Asian culture, but part of it is just decency. Like, you can disagree with somebody, and I would have a private conversation like that. There might be some disagreements, but I want you to talk with me directly. Not have scathing comments and stuff. And I just would see how people's sense of respect was taken away. I would never, ever want to do that when somebody would, even if I disagreed with them, there's just no need to do that, to dress down.
Yeah. I'll mention something that since I'm having this honor of interviewing 12 extraordinary elders in our field. So I had a very deep relationship with Bob Butler, and somehow in my delusional mind thought that I was kind of special, because he would call me, he came to my home, we would speak together on many programs. He loved to be involved in work projects that my company was doing. But then towards the end of his life, and then when he passed, all of a sudden, I found that he was doing that with dozens and dozens and dozens, and Andy Ackenbaum and Paul Nathanson and Rick Moody. And there were, Bob, as a true elder, he saw it as part of his role, even his final years and weeks, to shape things, to support people, to help. So there's a lesson to be learned, and I'm so glad that I shared the same mentor dad as you. I've got another question for you. Before we turn into the field itself, when you look at your own career, and you're, I think, 72 now, so you've been working in this field, going to be a half century in a little while. What do you think are your greatest contributions? If you personally, not what I read in your bio, but if you were to say, my one or two or three, my greatest contributions, I believe, are.
Well, I think my biggest one for me personally, because it touches my family. By the way, my brother was actually at On Lok too. My brother had advanced Parkinson's. So the fact that I was able to work there and help carry the legislation so that it became not just a good local community program, but it changed Medicare and Medicaid law, which now opens it up for where it's grown today, as you pointed out, but that people can further innovate on it. But it's something that it's my coal that I carry with me, knowing that there's a sense of dignity and common sense, but policy and payment and outcomes. I mean, so it has kind of the qualitative aspects of something that is right and good. And then it has the structure and the the law behind it. So to be connected to personally having benefited from it, as well as helping to shape it and carry it across the line for federal law, that's probably my biggest. And now, just as you brought up with Bob Butler, there are many younger people that I touch today and have touched. And somebody I just had contact with 3 years ago recontacted me over the weekend. So the fact that I have the opportunity to be a glide path, to help maybe smooth their path or give them a thought of something different, and to connect them sooner than they may have done that. So that's the second thing of today, but for tomorrow.
Fantastic. All right, now we're going to turn the corner a little bit. Let's talk about the field of aging, but I'm going to begin in perhaps an odd way. I'm going to ask you, in an ideal world, what role should older adults play? What is the purpose of an older adult now? Maybe not in 1920s, but what should older adults be in your mind? What role should they have in society?
Well, I think we have new and emerging roles, or roles that actually are more expanded than were possible before. I think we've all talked about the longevity bonus. In some ways, because we're living so much longer, that does not happen, on a global sense like this before. We've been given this gift of time. For those of us who have enough health and feel comfortably safe in our economic security, I think that role is that, to me, there's an obligation to do something with that time, in addition to the way people used to define retirement at 65. To your point, I'm 72 now, and I think that there's so much more to do. And the fact that we can do it, but do it in different ways. I purposely do not want to take another full-time job, but there's the opportunity to benefit from that. And I don't think society is quite ready because of the ageism that's there and some of the structural issues, and not knowing quite how to use this benefit in ways. I've been pushing for a long time, it's one of the areas of nudging, that we should get people toward the latter part of their career and begin to prepare their transition in ways that, if they want to work a little bit longer, but differently in that area, like nurses, for example. We're one of the biggest, there's right now over 3 million nurses, and the boomers are definitely retiring. There's a way to positively exploit societally the knowledge that people have, not as bedside nurses, not in necessarily some of these major roles, but there's a way to coordinate care, to be health coaches in other ways, because there's need. And then for children, children are lonely and depressed, oftentimes without role models. There's this whole work that you'll be talking to Mark Friedman in your series, the encore role with intergenerational work. So there is available these opportunities that are present, but yet to be shaped, yet to be built larger and systemically for older adults to contribute in ways, in depths and approaches, broad and narrow, than we've ever done before.
Okay, so now that you and I are no longer looking for jobs, I'm going to ask you a few blunt questions, okay? And I want your honest answer. Words are funny things. Do you think of yourself as a senior? Do you prefer the word elder? Do you prefer the word older adult? Or what's the word that you like, or what's the word you think we ought to do away with?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm old and I'm an older adult. I don't like the word elderly because that has a connotation. And when I was at the American Geriatrics Society, I was one of the 6 other CEOs that talked about reframing aging. And so there's language and there's social science that has elevated this. So older adults is definitely there. Seniors is kind of almost a Medicare, kind of phrase. So people use it. I don't go great umbrage about it. But I think if you ask me, I'm old and I'm an older adult woman.
Thank you. You talked about this asset of older people and the contributions that might be made, perhaps in more flexible ways than a full-time job or something. But so in the years leading up to COVID, the average retiree, and we've got about 70 million such folks, was watching 47 hours of television a week, and only about 24% of them volunteered in any way. So is that okay with you?
You know, personally, my own values, of course, I would want to exploit their time. I want people to have relaxation time, veg out time, it's okay. But you know, the issues of society are so many and so big. There's just seems to be an area, as we were told when we were young, you know, do that which really pulls your heartstrings or gives you fire in your belly. I don't think that's really gone away. I think we've got to rekindle that and figure out maybe there are different little areas that people can, and they don't have to do it full time. But I think the ability to help somebody else, to help an issue, so that society's going to be better off after we're gone. It just seems to me such a compelling call for engagement, for contribution, for meaning, for a sense of purpose. I think all these things are so important.
So in the years that you and I have been working in this field, there's a lot more older adults. Now, there are clearly segments of older adults that are struggling, that are vulnerable, that are poor, but there are also other segments that are doing okay. I mean, we have a 78-year-old president. Nancy Pelosi and Fauci are both 80, and we see 90-year-old athletes, and Mick Jagger, you know, is still knocking it out in his late 70s. So has the field of aging grown in order to meet the needs of an entire aging population? Or how would you, what are the flaws in the field from your life experience?
Well, let me go right to health professional training. Since I'm a nurse by background, I've worked with physicians. I'm currently working in San Francisco to help set up geriatric emergency departments. What's quite obvious, people are not content prepared with knowledge. It's amazing. We have in all of our respective health professions training, we get training in obstetrics and gynecology. We get trained in pediatrics, and the proportion of the curriculum is devoted to that. There's no area of systematic focus on older adults, and that's the bulk of the population. So this is a huge deficit. This is something I will continue to carry the banner for. And so I think knowledge is one, but the other one is attitude, going back to the ageism issue. It's the last ism that seems to be somewhat okay still. It isn't okay because we dismiss, we make invisible people. And so that's a whole nother area of reframing, which I think can be mitigated by thinking of ourselves as interdependent, not just independent, you know, like this is out West. You know, many of our cultures, our Latinx cultures, Asian cultures, African American, it's like interdependency. If we do that, we keep people in the bucket of personhood rather than in silos of categories of labels. And so when I'm having somebody teach us about foods that people used to make, and I mean, the love for that crosses generations. I mean, something that brings us together and understands that we all have value and there's an opportunity to learn and teach at any level. And our ability to build that interstitial energy would be so much healthier in terms of maximizing capacity, deployment, and a sense of feeling part of society, you know, and it mitigates loneliness, yes, isolation for children, for older adults. There's a way to go about doing this and to bring the energy back out.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question that very few people talk about. In some of your thinking and writing, you've talked about the importance of improving the quality of life and the quality of death.
Yep.
What's your point of view about how we handle dying and death these days?
Well, I think there's more discussion about it than ever. And I was just connected to the group in New York under Dr. Diane Meyer for the whole field of palliative care. So there's some beginning movement about that, but I still think we don't deal with it. I mean, one of the fastest growing societies is this anti-aging group. I mean, rather than thinking that, there's a normal life course, even if it's longer, we all die. I will die. When my first husband died, I was so aware of mortality that when I had to leave on a business trip, I'd leave my will out on my bed so that if for some reason I died, there things would be taken care of. So and I think because I became a widow early, the sense of mortality was there. And aging, we all know we'll go through it. I think ability to have these conversations with ourselves first and foremost, and then with our loved ones, and to kind of be able to prepare people. And that's one thing we did at our work at On Lok, to help families know that that these were some signs that things were going to be changing. So we prepare people to take some time to just get used to the fact that we will be gone, because that's what life is. You're born, and over time, we all die.
Teach me just a sentence or two about what are the economics of the last 3-6 months of life in terms of how does that shape up the way we currently deal with dying?
Well, I don't know the latest figures, but it's been often said that the last 6 months is when we spend most money, regarding medical and healthcare.
More money than the entire rest of our lives, I read.
And that's ridiculous, isn't it? Isn't it better to use our health and well-being money, building it along so that we can die a death that we know will happen, and hopefully we're able to let go, letting our families know that there is a time for that. And unfortunately, when I was a student, I could see how people were pumped back with all kinds of tubes and things like that. And I knew that person was already really dying, but the amount of services that came in, and there's a dark side to that people have said, systems make a lot of money by doing all this stuff to people. And we have to continually address that. That's not how most of us really want to die.
So what's been fascinating for me, my friend, in talking to a number of folks like yourself, you're now my 4th interview, is the language that people use and how they think. You've had 72 years now to organize your thinking. You seem to believe that you have a 3-legged stool that drives you: social justice, democratic means, and capitalism. Wow. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, I grew up during the time of the 60s. So the sense of social justice and also being, somebody who was a minority, as I was called in those days. You're aware of disparities. We didn't label it with health equity and inclusion, things like that, but we were aware of it, and that there was an unevenness. So social justice, of a sense of decency, is important. I think democratic means, I am so grateful that I'm here. I'm an American citizen. I was born here in the United States, and understanding that there's a give and take, often messy, but the fact that our ability to voice our preferences and to speak with a sense of confidence that I'm not going to be thrown in jail. And also the fact that there is, a kind of a give and take. A third one was capitalism. I recognize, I came through pretty much public systems and not-for-profit, but I understand that capitalism also is the fuel that, if used well, can drive growth and supportive services. One by one, we as not-for-profit organizations may do some great work, but we don't necessarily change the system. Because we are in this country, there is the opportunity to use capital for good and the ability to make some profit, but to use that to fuel growth for services and care and innovation that's needed.
So let me turn into one of the, thank you. And let me turn into one of the points you just made. Has your Chinese legacy and family history, has it worked against you or for you?
I feel that I've been very lucky. I haven't ever experienced overt professional discrimination or racism. I think I'm of the age where I was, as I said, I was one female Asian in the entire Boston College campus. So I came in at a time where people didn't know quite where to place you, or so I wasn't a threat in terms of a big group of people showing up. So I think in some ways it's given me opportunity because I was an outlier that was not threatening to people, frankly, but the fact that I would understand systems, but I still push for change within that.
I noticed you used the word nudge a few minutes before. So you feel any part of you is Jewish? Your husband is Jewish. I mean, you've got this multiracial, multi-religious life story. Is that hard to reconcile, or?
No, I've always been an oddity. And so I've always even my mother said that when I was little, I would stay apart from all the other kids. I would watch and all. So I think I'm used to being somebody who's on the perimeter and just on the edge, but hoping to learn and understand, but choosing when to participate.
If you could try to think, my friend, what is it that motivates you? I mean, you are a warrior in this field on these subjects. You're not, you might define yourself as a watcher or someone on the fringe, but you have been right up in the belly of the beast for a decade after decade after decade, trying to make things better and make things right. What motivates you? What is it? How would you define it?
I just think that everybody should have a fair shot. You know, we're in this amazing country, and the fact that some stuff is pure luck. And for those of us who are blessed, I mean, I can honestly say to you, we were very poor as a family of immigrants, and so, but I never felt poor, and that was interesting. I remember in fourth grade we had some kind of thing we filled out, and they asked you to check, you know, are you poor, middle class, or rich? Well, I knew I wasn't rich, but I didn't feel poor, so I checked middle class, you know. But it was just like, that was just a way of thinking, you know. And the other thing I found is, you know, I wanted to share with you, when I was in high school, I went to see a play by myself, and it was called The Game of Life. And it was this big, at the theater, it was like a game board with steps and little cards that you would pick up, you throw a dice. And this man started as a young man, and he was getting toward older age when he was on his game of life. And then he suddenly realized he could step off that board at any time. And that play told me, you know, people may have a path that everybody talks about, but you can choose whether to stay on the board or to step off the board and create a different game. And that's what has allowed me some openness and creativity. And the fact that I think I shared with you, one of the gifts with my father is that he gave me a sense of agency. Agency is that I believed that I could think for myself and make decisions. And he said to me, he says, I think that, you know, likely whatever decision you make, it's probably the right decision. And when a parent gifts you with that, and my mother also was somebody who took risk, and I would tell her things that I would do that I wouldn't tell my father, and she'd say, go for it, you know. So with the courage and support she gave me, and with this is unconditional love and belief for my father, I've had some warm coals in my heart and my soul.
And thank you for sharing them with us. So I've got a number of more questions. We got about 15 minutes, so I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit. So here we have this field of aging or gerontology, and it's largely grown up out of not-for-profit, academic, government-supported attention to certain needs, helping those who are vulnerable and struggling. But I noticed the field doesn't have that much of an impact on faith leaders, and it doesn't have that much an impact on housing. 95% of the housing stock in America is not aging friendly. It surely has not impacted the world of modern marketing or media or movies very much, which are profoundly ageist. And so let me ask you this, and I'm going to ask it to you in a kind of a blunt way. We who have been in the field for decades, there's still a lot of ageism. We still don't have proper roles for older people. We still have Alzheimer's and dementia. Have we failed as leaders?
Yes and no. Yes, in that I think we could have thought about this a little differently earlier on. We were so busy with our heads down, focusing on what we're doing. We didn't have a chance, or didn't take the chance to step up and think, why is it so hard when this is so obvious, this is important? So I think we could have asked ourselves much earlier and thought about that, rather than busy doing stuff, rather than reflecting on the life course that, yes, we've been given a bonus of 30 years oftentimes in society. What do we do with it? So we could have started earlier, but like the day to start is today type of thing. We go through it, and it's like structural issues. We've talked a lot about structural racism as of late, given all that's happening in the context of the recent race issues that have been elevated. But the age issues, I think, it's interesting. The question is, who's in power at any given time? And this baby boomer bunch, you and I are part of that, has kind of moved along, and whether it's too late or whether it's an opportunity to think through our responsibility now to really support the other generations. I think the millennials and the boomers have a lot of opportunities to cross-cut. And so yeah, but take environmentalism. This is, we should not be doing this to our ether of doing what we're doing. And millennials are so concerned about this, if not the next group.
So let's look at the field of gerontology. There are many folks, they're perhaps properly thinking, to say one is a gerontologist if they've studied gerontology and gotten a degree in gerontology. Then there are other folks who believe, well, gerontology is a hybrid field. You could be a physician and say you work as a gerontologist, or you could be a social worker, or you could be a psychologist, which is what I was trained in. I don't believe you've got any degrees in gerontology. Am I right?
Right.
If you were to kind of shape the way the field should best grow and meet the needs of this age wave, should gerontologists be people who've got a specific degree in gerontology, or should it open the tent for a wider range of competencies?
I think it's a yes and. First of all, we need people who specialize, like geriatricians. We have nearly 67,000 pediatricians in this country. We have under 6,000 geriatricians. And I remember approaching your door about this, many moons ago. And so, people just kind of go to certain areas. But I think, and the American Geriatrics Society just last week came out with minimal competencies and training that all physician trainees should go through. So it goes back to this, everybody have a taste of what this is, whether you're an architect, whether you're an industrial designer, you are an engineer, everybody should understand a sense of population. So I think it's a yes and. There's some people who will specialize, but everybody needs a modicum of just knowledge and understanding of who's here and what's different in pediatrics and geriatrics.
participating in these programs are young folks, 20s, 30s. They might be envisioning, I'd like to be a change maker in my career. What's the top piece of advice you'd give to someone early in their career if they want to be a change maker? What would you tell them?
Well, I think part of it is understanding history and context. So in other words, everybody comes up with a light bulb, but maybe some of these light bulbs have been lit earlier. And the ability to see what light has been shed just for some context, but then to take that fire in one's belly and combine that with some understanding and listening, as well as creating, because everybody's always ready to innovate. And I find that with young tech entrepreneurs who find a grandparent who is handicapped by something and they come up with a great idea, but they don't always have the background of what's been tried and having it be more person-centered. So I think understanding knowledge, seeking out people who could be helpful to them. And I find people find me on LinkedIn these days, and they just contact me and ask whether I have a chance to talk. And I do. And so the ability to use available knowledge and find maybe places where it's possible, some universities may have people who have groups of individuals who could be sources of connectivity. So I think intergenerational connection will be helpful.
Gotcha. I've heard you say, when talking about leadership, understand where you fit, embrace ambiguity, and know when to leave.
Yes.
Explain.
Yes. I left On Lok when I knew that I had done my best work. So people were stunned that I was going to leave. I'd been there almost 25 years. So it's not unusual in that particular time people would stay on, And I just think that when you've got juice and when the juice is simmering down, it's time for yourself, number one, hear yourself in listening to yourself. Secondly, think about where you're working and do they need a different leader? I mean, On Lok was primed for a different leader who wanted to grow a product that had been designed. I was not going to be your best skilled person to do that. So know where you fit in an organization in terms of how you can contribute, as well as what you are getting back in return. So thinking of fit is important.
When you think of your own aging process, you and I and all the folks I'll be interviewing have the odd experience of having been writing about and caring for and thinking about aging, but now we're elders ourselves. Has your aging been an ascent or has it been a descent personally?
Yeah, ascent. I am so thrilled not to be working at a job right now. I can't tell you. It's funny, I read an article about our hair. As you can tell, I've never colored my hair. But the fact that when people are so stressed, there has been some stuff that people turn gray quicker. But they are finding that people want stress when it goes down. They can tell from your hair follicles. Not that it's going to turn back to your original color, but it gets color back. So I think that my ascent is that I'm just grateful for the freedoms and the choice and the flexibility that I have now. So for me, it's aging has been a huge plus.
Wow, fantastic. All right, a few more questions and I'm going to hit them quick. Has there been a particular philosophy or individual or idea that's been extraordinarily powerful as a source of inspiration for you in your life?
Well, I've had multiple influences, and I think it's interesting. These nuns that you saw in the picture with the Girl Scouts were a very big part of my background, and I was so delighted that I could bring pace into some of their lives. That the gift that they gave me was able to do that. So I have this desire of the kind of psychological privilege that I had with gifts of people who've taken care of me along the way, that I must use my life well for leaving a better footprint than my small feet had at the beginning. So I feel a sense of societal obligation to use the gifts that I have in ways that benefit the many, because somebody else has done that. Some other people have done that to open doors, create paths that I didn't, I would not have had to go through. So it's a sense of interdependency and obligation and responsibility.
So you have been a fierce worker, traveling, conferences, meetings, leadership, reports to read. How has your dear husband, Philip, put up with your activism and your ambition?
Well, I think you and I had a short conversation before we did the interview. I just feel that all the men in my life, my current husband included, have given me a sense of openness and acceptance of rolling with it. I mean, the fact that we lived here in San Francisco, let me just give you an example of how wonderful he's been. And I was president of AARP and getting the ACA passed as well. So I took this job at the American Geriatrics Society based in New York City. He packed our whole house here and got on a plane with one of our friends, and the two of them unpacked our New York apartment, sight unseen, and I showed up after I finished my work at AARP, and I had the whole apartment furnished with all of our stuff. So this is the kind of guy he is.
How do you and Philip feel about the spiking recently of racism towards Asian people? How does he feel about you going out in San Francisco on your own?
Yeah, well, he's very protective, and sometimes I have umbrage about it because he doesn't want me to go out by myself because I'm an old Chinese woman at this stage, and that has, older Asians have been really targeted. So yes, it's one of those things of both some anger as well as pain, as well as awareness of being much more alert than ever before. And that's even here in San Francisco, which is phenomenal.
Okay, just a couple of 3 quick questions to go. So your wisdom is obvious and profound. If you look back at your life and you see all of the prejudices, the racism, the homophobia, the discrimination, the ageism, like what's wrong with us that we are so driven to be mean to other people?
I think there's always this historical, and it will continue, the otherism, that if they're not like me, they're other. And even say within China, your son who's now quite a student and expert in it.
My son.
Your son.
Yeah, by the way, I want to say, just for people watching, that Jennie, very active on Facebook. And even though I don't know that you've ever met our son, who's been living in China most of the last decade, although he's in exile right now, he and his girlfriend, she's not allowed back in the United States, he's not allowed in China. You always comment on him and you always wish him well and you always read what he's up to. And I think to myself, you've sort of stepped in as kind of a guardian angel. So I want to thank you for that. And it's a part of who you are as a human being that you open your arms to so many people. But what we are saying is, what's with us about that we make people the other and then we be mean to them?
Well, I was starting to say in China, Northern Chinese and Southern Chinese have this. There's the sense of a clan. There's a clan that is an in crowd and an out crowd, and so that's the constancy of perhaps grabbing power and money and control. That's kind of the worst part of our human nature, and so the desire to call on our better angels is what many of us continue to strive to work for.
Okay, next to last question. Life balance. What role do golf and orchids play in your life?
Well, orchids more so. Golf, to talk about, being with my husband, he likes to have me play golf because it's, whether we play 9 holes or 18, it's a block of time that I don't think about anything versus oftentimes, being, quotes, rather busy. So, yeah, they're a part of it, but I read a lot too, so I just, but it's a mix of reading, whether it's about your son or other, kinds of inventions. I love stuff that's about kind of what people are designing to make lives better. So they're, short little tools, whether it's even for people with diabetes, anything that helps people's lives be designed in a way that it makes it quality of life. I just love that. And orchids, have always loved orchids. I've had 110 orchids at one given time. I now am down to probably 20, but a sense of beauty, the slow growingness of them, and waiting for them to bloom is a joy.
So my last question, imagine it's many decades from now. You're gone, I'm gone, we're in the future. What is it you want people to say or think about Jennie Chin Hansen?
Oh, that I lived a life that worked towards decency and care and compassion, and felt privileged to spend my life making things a bit better.
Well, I want to say to you, my friend, that your gentle and loving nature, your not requesting or desiring like I and others to sort of push your way into the front of the spotlight, but yet kind of behind the scenes, but also when appropriate, right at the front, to have spent your life shaping this field. And in many ways, I think of you as the heartbeat of the modern field of aging. And I want to thank you for your time and thank you for all that you've done so far. And I can't wait to see what you've got cooking next. Thanks, Jennie.
And mutually, Ken, thank you for your generosity and your philanthropy in making this series possible. I know we each feel very honored and privileged. Thank you.
Be safe and be well. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.